Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, the voice of bodybuilding. Today, we are here for a little bonus episode with myself talking about my personal experience with Masteron. Now, this is an episode that I wanted to do off the back of my recent exposure, as there has been quite a few people asking various questions about essentially how I found the effects of Masteron. And I'd like to just take this opportunity to say that when talking about PEDs and steroids on the podcast, this is never a empowerment to essentially try and say that people should be using PEDs. This is for information purposes only and sharing of personal anecdote. If you are looking at going down this route, as always, I would advise that you educate yourself and that you get guidance from someone that has education. Okay, so my journey as a bodybuilder is not going to be the same as yours. And that's important to, of course, highlight when it comes to my own use. Now, the risk versus reward is something that's thrown around in the bodybuilding space. But what does that actually mean? And I believe that we should all have our own risk and reward ratios, and we should fully understand that. Because if you are using anything, you're putting compounds in your body, whether that's oral or injectable. For me personally, there needs to be a purpose, and there also needs to be an understanding as to what actually is the risk of using Z compound. Now, for me, using Masteron in this recent cycle had a purpose. So I wanted to finish my diet phase by implementing Masteron for a 5.5 week period and seeing how that affected my physique in a diet phase. Now, for me personally, I've used Anavar, Primo, and Masteron. Now, if you're in this realm, you may be aware that there's been a bit of a problem trying to get Primo of late, and Masteron's always been a PED that I've been intrigued by. It's something that I've had multiple conversations about, and actually, for me, it's about okay, so what could I actually collect from a data standpoint as to how different compounds affect me? And that's from a physiological standpoint, a physique standpoint, and a mental health standpoint. Because when we put different compounds in, we can absolutely notice different things happening. So Primo, for me personally, would be my choice over Anavar. I prefer the injectable route. And when this shortage came about, I had multiple conversations, as I say, about Masteron. I wanted to try it out. So for me personally, I would look at a timeline for any PED use. When we're looking at anabolics, I use cycles. I use set exposure times. Now, something that I don't know is spoken about very much is essentially when we're looking at using anabolics, guys, it's for a purpose, right? So we want that clear. Now, have we got potential for addictive personalities in the bodybuilding space? Absolutely, we have. Now, I know within myself, I am absolutely of that nature. And I could easily run anabolics all year round. I absolutely could, because the effects for me, you start to chase the dragon, right? And I'm going to talk about what I noticed by using Masteron. And I think it's important to highlight that, to actually recognize within yourself, what are you using anabolics for? Is there a set time frame, and is that within a timeline of use over your competition season, over your off season, a mixture of both? What does that look like? And are you understanding of that? And what are we looking to gain from use? So I know that absolutely when I'm on cycle, generally speaking, I feel better. And absolutely with the Masteron in, I did. I had a sense of well-being in the diet that I didn't have before I put it in. Training performance for sure can tick up. You can just feel, and this is what I felt by using Masteron, is that in a diet, right, training does suffer, generally speaking, particularly as you get deeper into the deficit. And I felt like there was just that extra bit in each set where I could get those reps for a whole set and not be fucked on, rep number 5 or 6. It was like, okay, I can last that whole set. So there was an extra pep there. I felt the well-being in general, so just doing my steps, doing my normal day-to-day stuff, I felt that boost. Now, outside of that, I wouldn't say that I felt any different in regards to some of the things that I've noticed on something like Primo. So when in off season, on my last exposure before this Masteron one, when I utilized Primo, I noticed an increase in sex drive. There was absolutely an uptick of I'd get to the gym and be like, I am here to train, right? Obviously, you've got food in, you've got different variables at play in an off season. So, is that more matched to potentially more of that training performance? Absolutely, yes. So, when we look at the Masteron, I didn't have that uptick in sex drive. I just really, generally speaking, noticed the well-being and being able to last in my training sessions more so. Now, from a standpoint of my physique, did I notice a difference? Absolutely, yes. And again, this is where we can chase the dragon, right? I was drier, fuller, and essentially, as I went through that last portion of the diet, it was like growing into a diet. I looked that fullness, I looked more aesthetically pleasing. And does that make me feel good? Yes, it does. Now, when we look at a side effects and the risk versus reward, and this is something I've already mentioned, above all else, guys, you should be getting bloods done. And that's as a natural competitor as well. But I've had my bloods done, I have them done regularly. And this is super, super important if you're going to use any PEDs, right? So for me, I have had side effects from using PEDs and anabolics. I did an episode earlier in the year around Christmas time talking about have I masculinized, have I virilized? And I have got effects that are associated with anabolic use. So when going into this Masteron cycle, I had to weigh up if these effects change and I see more of this happening, am I okay with that? And the thing is, guys, this takes monitoring, right? This takes you using your brain and also being aware of what can happen. So for me, before the Masteron cycle had started, I've absolutely got more hair growth, particularly around the upper leg and around, where we go into the pelvis area, thicker and more hair. That's something I'm okay with, right? So that's one of the things I've noticed. I've got a slightly deeper voice. Now you can track your voice in a voice changing app, which I do use. And that's something that over time of using anabolic exposures has deepened. I am in a position where I'm happy with where my voice is. It's deep anyway. I was absolutely, someone as a child that had quite a deep voice anyway, and maybe a little bit masculine. And it's a very small change. So I am okay with that. And then I do have, and this is something I spoke about again on the podcast I just referenced, an enlarged clip. Now, again, this is something I'm okay with. This is something that I'm comfortable with. And if that is to get bigger, I'm okay with that. So this is a personal decision, right? It's more sensitive. And you can notice when you're using anabolics that it's even more sensitive during your cycle. So I'm okay with that. Now, in the Masteron cycle in itself, I did notice it was around week 2, week 3, I felt like my voice was getting a little bit more hoarse. And I was like, is it deepening? I need to keep an eye on this. I want to clock this. I'm okay with where it is right now. I'm not necessarily looking for my voice to get much deeper, but we all have decisions to make, right? We all roll the dice, as it were, if we are informed. So, on that day where I noticed there was a bit of a crackle, and I thought, is this a change occurring? I clocked it and then monitored it for the next few days. Now, at that point, I had a decision to make. I could titrate down the dose, I could keep as I was and keep monitoring. And that's what I decided to do. Actually, when I came off the Masteron, nothing has changed. My voice is the same. So these are examples, right, of things that are real life, guys. Yes, we can chase a physique outcome. Absolutely, we can. But do you understand the potential of the side effects? Now, this is beyond what you can visibly see. This is also your organ health. This is why we need to look at more than just, oh, I've got a bit more hair. We need to look at bloods. We need to look at monitoring all of these things and understand if we're okay with them. Because for sure, we can chase that dragon. We can feel these effects and it feels good. But wherever you're at, whatever phase you're in, please, guys, do this with an informed nature. Yes, I understand that, oh, it don't fucking matter, I'll deal with it after. We've all done it in life, right? I absolutely have with a multitude of things. Remember, guys, when you are using anabolics, for me, I personally believe it needs to be for a reason. And you want to be asking questions from whoever is advising you the certain compounds to use. Getting those bloods is a huge contributor to understanding what's going on physiologically and also clocking mentally, how do you feel? Who can you talk to? And are you self-aware enough to understand if the effects of any compounds are negative to your mental health? And that is important as well. So overall, for me personally, I would absolutely look to use Masteron again in future cycles. I'm now in off season. I'm pretty much clearing the reverse out period now. And for me, it is a case of having some time here on my baseline PEDs, and then I will implement my next exposure. Always with what do I want to get out of this? What is the minimal amount of anabolics I can use to get the reward that I am looking for?